Welcome back again to Authors and Innovators 2025. Our theme this year, the resilient entrepreneur. And I can't think of a better book or a better guest than Professor Andrew Hoffman from the University of Michigan. Folks around here may know because know him well. He spent many, many years at the Institute for Business in Global Society at HBS.
I should clarify, I spent 1 year there.
Okay. Well, I must be confusing that with the over 100 articles and books. If you haven't seen something by Andy Hoffman in your bookstore, you soon will. I'm excited to talk with him about his latest book, Business School and the Noble Purpose of the Market, which I hope everyone will get. Professor Hoffman, what I want to talk about is the key to resiliency, which you argue is really trying to make sure that whatever you're doing something that is true to yourself. So I'd like to talk about your favorite class at Michigan, Management as a Calling.
Okay. I'm more than happy to. And please call me Andy. Let's keep this informal. The idea of resilience, there was a book that came out a number of years ago from a professor at Yale called Excellent Sheep. And the metaphor is quite clear. Our students are excellent. They're really smart, but they're sheep. They're chasing shiny baubles. They want the external affirmation. And this, I think, is dangerous. And I think we promote that in higher education, that we're just going to give you the skills to do the job and don't think outside the lines. And that's dangerous because, business schools, they feed into finance and consulting. Consulting is a churn 'em up, spit 'em out model. And the odds of them getting fired for no reasons of their own are very high. It's a rank and yank system. If they don't know who they are, they will not be able to pick themselves up. But if they do, then they will. So it really, from my mind, comes down to what are their intrinsic objectives and what are their extrinsic goals. And if they focus too much on the extrinsic, they will not know who they are. And so Management as a Calling is a class, not in your typical sense. I don't stand in the front and lecture. This is what a calling is. I actually take them out into the woods for a weekend. I take away their social media. And
my goodness.
Yeah.
How could they survive?
You know what, though? I'll tell you something, Larry. At the end, at the beginning, some of them obviously forget. And I have to take their phones, but then give them back. And they are not happy about it. They do like being forced to disconnect, and they do like that break. That's encouraging to me. But the class is a series of guided, it has 4 components: inspirational readings, guided exercises, quiet discernment, and community engagement. You don't do this alone. And I create an environment. As a professor, I'm more of a facilitator. I create the conditions, guide them through exercises, but they do the internal work. I really stick with the language of retreat, calling and vocation, discernment, even going so far, we're going to do it again tomorrow. And at the beginning, I'll say, look around you. Everyone here is a pilgrim. Don't distract them with conversations over football or politics. Allow them to stay on focus. And this language is really important to me, and I think that's what makes the program special. I was asked if I would change the name to self-leadership. I said, absolutely not. It really is about the work that people to do. And it's really important, we don't solve the problem in this one weekend. I say, this is going to be a lifelong pursuit.
Right.
So how do you keep this going for the rest of your life?
I love the framing of it, Andy. Particularly, I'm reminded of Frederick Buechner's great definition of vocation, where your great joy meets the world's great need.
Right.
And what do you say to those CEOs who might be listening, our entrepreneurs, our investors, our business school professors who might be joining Authors and Innovators, who say, Andy, I have to make sure that in a challenging environment with structural changes in the workforce, my students just need to get jobs. I just need to scale this. They can figure this out. This is a luxury.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's a great question. And I have had conversations with folks on this, and it's not an either or. I just think we focus too much on the how of business, and we don't focus enough or at all on the why of business. And I just think that we need to bring in, and this relates to all of higher education. You know, we've kind of lost our way. We have become skill shops rather than helping people develop a clear philosophy for their life. And so, in some ways, I think of it like business school meets the humanities, meets the liberal arts. And I think that this is something that the entire university could think about integrating into their curriculum. I know engineering has done a lot of soul searching on, we're just giving people skills to develop these technologies. We need to start to give them consideration for who are the people that are going to be impacted by these technologies. Why are we doing this? What's our objective? You know, and it really brings back the noble purpose of engineering. When I was an engineering student, I started as an engineer. There was a book I read called The Existential Pleasures of Engineering, and I just loved the book. It was right.
What a great title.
It is, and
Wow.
engineering can be fun. It can be satisfying. Business can be as well. You know, we have this mindset right now, and I do deliberately say mindset, that the purpose of the firm is to make money for the shareholder.
Right.
Milton Friedman. Peter Drucker said the purpose of the firm is to identify and serve a market. If it makes money, it's a measure of how well they do that. That is a much better definition for practicing managers, because if you just focus on the shareholder, you just focus on next quarter's returns,
Right.
you focus on efficiency, and you have outcomes like what's happening to Boeing right now when they shifted from a company that produced high quality products with their best talent to a company that focused on next quarter's returns and outsourced a lot, and planes started to fail.
Clear, simple, and plain works until it doesn't,
Yeah.
which is your basic argument. I was struck by the fact that you talk about this as a challenge, as a problem, and as a mindset. And struck me, you cited one example that students applying to business school typically score higher on traits of narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism,
Yeah.
and that business school amplifies those traits.
Yes.
Talk a bit about that.
Yeah. And you know, those are published papers, and it's the kind of students we draw. I don't know if it's true at BC. I'm willing to bet it's the same there because it's the same at Ross and other business schools. Students on the rest of campus don't look at our students too fondly. They see them as arrogant. They see them as entitled.
Masters of the universe is something that I often hear. Right. And
Here at Ross, the rest of the students on campus call them Ross holes. And so we need to get away from that. Rakesh Khurana at Harvard wrote a wonderful book called From Higher Aims to Hired Hands. And he said, when business schools were first proposed in the early 1900s, universities said, no, this is just a skill shop. It's not a serious area of academic inquiry. I would add that, you know, I went to MIT, and some of the old-time engineering professors still call Sloan, the Sloan School of Management, they still call it the secretarial school. They don't really think much of what comes out of there. Now, they came back and said, no, we're going to teach the titans of industry how to lead commerce and services society. We're going to teach these people in the same spirit we teach doctors and lawyers to serve society. The conclusion of his book is we've lost that direction. We are skill shops. We are access to networks. And we need to get back to those basic principles. And I would add that the threat of AI is an opportunity here, because there are things AI can do. There are certain skill shops that AI can replace. AI cannot replace that personal, relational aspect that I'm trying to bring in of connecting with students' deeper purpose of why are they here, what are they trying to do with their lives. And I would add, those surveys that show the dark triad, they're from about 10, 12, 15 years ago. Today's students are starting to be different. They are pushing back. There are students, I've seen it here at Ross, I've seen it at Stanford, I've seen it at Berkeley, are saying, this is not the education I wanted. I want something different. I want more rigor. And I want more connection to what's really going on in the world. A lot of them are looking for purpose. The idea of management as a calling resonates. Not all. Some students still just want to come in and get rich and don't care about
right.
fixing it. But a lot of them are coming in and really resonating with this idea. And that's exciting to me.
What you do a lot of readings outside of business. Which ones in your experience, and I realize it's not lengthy, you're trying this out, sounds like a great course. What particular areas, readings, contemplations do you find resonate the most with today's business students?
Well, I mean, they're still interested in the basics of business. I'm not saying we get away from that. That
Right.
earlier question of the tension, it's not an either or. We can still teach
We can do both.
how to be excellent managers, but also
Right.
how do we cultivate wisdom, character, judgment? David Brooks says those aren't learned in a book. Those are learned like a craft. You practice it.
Right.
You're putting he calls it a consistent moral culture. He points out that there are some schools, you meet their grads, you know they went there, not just by the skills they have, but their outlook on life. And how do we create that in business schools? You do know when someone went to a business school, but can you tell they went to Ross or BC or Yale or Stanford? That's an important question. And I think the rankings steer us into this monoculture of what business schools are. And I think this is seriously detrimental to the future of the profession. So I think I lost track of where your question was going, but
Well, I don't think you did, because it sounds like it's not an either or.
yeah,
Both things can be true, that you can get these great skills, but you can also lean into testing, trying, and finding your own why.
right.
You mentioned a book in the text, which I thought was just terrific, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. I've got to post it here on it because I need to go and get that.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about that book and how that might be something that that grabs the attention not only of your students but of the CEOs who might be listening to this.
Right. This was written by a hospice nurse, Bronnie Ware, and she, through her years of experience, interviewed people, and they knew they were going to die, and what did they regret? And the number one regret is, I wished I'd lived the life I was meant to live and not the life everyone else expected me to live. And that fits in with the excellent sheep, that fits in with the extrinsic. And if you focus on the intrinsic, you're going to do what you were meant to do. And I think that's really important. When I have my opening lecture, I ask my students, what question you were asked from a very young age, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what if I were to tell you that's the wrong question? And what what were you meant to be? That puts your brain on a whole different path of trying to figure out what is this all about? And so I tell the students, I want to help you avoid the fate that Bronnie Ware is pointing out, that so many people fall into. And I augment that with other readings. There was an article in the New York Times from someone who went back to their college reunion at the Harvard Business School. And he looked around, everyone was extremely wealthy and extremely unhappy. Many divorces, really lost their way. And there are other articles about people who know they're going to die and what are their reflections. And what's interesting is young people respond to this, but older executives respond to it as well, because as they're starting to get closer to the end of their life,
They get it.
you and I are, they start to think more about legacy. And and that starts to change your thinking. So I would love to offer this to a bunch of 60s or late 50s CEOs and see where
we're going to try at Authors and Innovators. Talk a bit about other, you cite some great examples. I don't want to give too much away because I want people to read the book, The Nordic Example. Can you talk about why that might be compelling?
Well, I mean, I teach a course called Re-examining Capitalism, and I'm talking about that here in this book too. We need to teach students the system in which they'll practice their craft, and to think of their role as not just running businesses, and in the words of Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel laureate in economics, practice exploitive capitalism. I know the system is broken. I don't care. I'm going to get my piece, and I'll let someone else deal with what falls. And instead say they have a role as stewards of the market in order to make sure that it runs well. And so I teach this course, Re-examining Capitalism, and in the first class I say, define capitalism, and they can't. And I just say, don't you find that fascinating? You're coming out of a business school and you can't define capitalism, especially because surveys show that this generation is becoming disenchanted with capitalism, even business school students. So they should understand capitalism. They should understand that what Adam Smith was writing about, what early critics were writing about, Karl Marx, early proponents, Joseph Schumpeter. They should understand the basics of capitalism, but they should also understand that it is a set of human-made institutions in service to humans, and if it doesn't work, you got to fix it. This is where I can even quote Tucker Carlson, who said, "Capitalism is a tool, like a staple gun or a toaster. If it's broken, fix it. Fix it." And so I teach them that it has evolved over time and that it is diverse. There are many ways to do this. And so I actually have a session where they examine capitalism in different countries. Um, Nordic capitalism, very different than American capitalism, very different than Chinese capitalism. There is a variant in China. Nordic capitalism, they're blown away by the idea of the size of the safety net
Right.
and the tax rate. They're stunned by this. And then I educate them that the United States used to have a much higher tax rate prior to Ronald Reagan. And even if you go back to World War II, the upper tax bracket was in the 90 percentile. And that blows their mind. And then, pointing out, okay, how we structure our market is a statement of values. And so the Nordic countries have chosen this. Now, they're not without their problems. They've got an immigration flux going after this safety net. They've got an aging population that requires a workforce that can support the tax base. It has its pros and its cons. And I would also add, it's not, look at it clear-eyed. I mean, they talk about the social purpose and connection and community, yet they are beneficiaries of a lot of North Sea oil that is contributing to climate change. And so all I'm trying to get them to see is there's many ways to set this up, and it's a projection of the values that you hold dear in your society. And I would add, the place where those norms and rules of the market are set are government. Government does have a role in the market. We have this very silly binary conversation. It's either neoclassical or Keynesian. It's either liberal or conservative. It's either more or less. Why don't we start to have a conversation over the right role of market and the role of government in the market? And I would add the right role of business and policymaking. Too many students see lobbying as just inherently evil, and I try and educate them that there's a value that business people bring to the policymaking process if done right. And another irony of business education is very few business schools offer courses on lobbying. Fewer still offer courses on constructive and I don't want to use a progressive, constructive lobbying.
Right.
Or that market works well for everybody.
Yeah. The thing that I love most about this is you, like so many law professors, and I feel the same way, you're trying to get students to see the gray.
Yeah.
And the black and white doesn't seem to be working for a lot of them, particularly the third or fourth year into what they're doing. Can you talk a bit about who do you want to read this book? Who would you like to reach with this? You've written so much. When you wrote this, who did you have in mind?
When I originally wrote it, I had students in mind. And the publishers said, this has a broader audience, adjust it. And so I adjusted it. And so it's really anyone who cares about business education and the future of the market. But there are specific audience. So students, the message to students is threefold. Business schools are broken. Go anyway. The power to have an influence and meaning in business is huge. But take control of your education. Be a discerning consumer. Don't just take the curriculum and say, I got my education. Look around campus. There are other schools. Go to engineering. Go to social work. Go to the School for Environment. Go to public policy. A lot of the education is in between the classes. Go to seminars. Go to lectures. Knock on a professor's door. The number one factor on someone's satisfaction with their education is a personal relationship with a professor.
Right.
And they're out there. Some will say, no, I'm too busy, but many will not. Do an independent study, organize a conference, organize a panel discussion. There's so many ways. You're dropped into a resource-rich environment. Take full advantage of it. So that's audience number one. Audience number two is obviously professors and administrators who can change the system. I'm trying to encourage my peers to think of themselves, I call it be an elder. I can keep focusing on my citation count and my A-level publications. To what end? There's no end there. And so I want to transition. I want others to transition once they become full to stop thinking about their own success and start to think about the next generation and the institutions through which that they will come up in. There's also a role for business people, alumni of business schools. Their kids may be going to business schools. They may be on boards of business schools. They may have the ear of the dean. They may be part of alumni associations. Apply a little pressure to say, business schools, you're falling out of step with what is going on in the market right now. We need this. I wrote an article in The Conversation on this topic, and there was a comment that came back that I thought was really interesting. Someone wrote back and said, look, I've been in business for 30 years, and in my opinion, we're graduating too many MBAs, and they only come in with one mindset: how to make the system efficient, how do we reduce costs, and they're cutting into the bone, and they really don't know what they're doing. There was a study done in National Bureau of Economic Research in 2022, and they looked at companies in the United States and Denmark, and they split them into two samples: those that were run by people who went to business school and those who were run by people who didn't. Over 5 years, between the two samples, no difference in revenues or profit growth. The big difference between the two is that businesses run by people who went to business school, labor wages went down 6%. People who didn't go to business school, they shared the profits with labor. And they conclude there's a causal connection between this activity and the values learned in business school. We need to rethink our values. And I would add, by the way, I talked to colleagues about this, and some of them say, Andy, I'm not really comfortable bringing values in the classroom. My answer is, you already are.
You already are. Yeah. Yeah, very astute.
Efficient is always good. Yeah. People are inherently selfish. The environment only has value for our consumption. All these are embedded in the curriculum. And
Andy, what are you reading these days?
I always have a stack, and it keeps growing. So two that have popped up right now. One is David Book's latest book. I really like David Book's. I love The Second Mountain. I love The Road to Character. Right now I'm reading How to Know a Person.
It's a great book.
Yeah. And then I'm also Anthony Kronman. He was the former dean of the Yale Law School. Has a really nice book called Education's End: Why Did Universities give up on teaching the purpose of life? And it's a growing conversation. Derek Bach has a book about this, and I think that is the question for us today, and I'm trying to engage it.
I'm delighted that you are doing the work you're doing. Thank you for doing it. The book is Business School and the Noble Purpose of the Market. Andy Hoffman, thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry. I really appreciated it.